Hello Illumineers and welcome to a Into the Inklands update of Alice Cascading support. So if you're not familiar, I did a deck tech earlier. It's a deck list built entirely around Alice Growing Girl as the win condition. This Emerald Sapphire list used support mechanics to pump up several characters who generated bonus lore when their strength requirements were met. If you're interested in that original deck tech, I don't want to go over all of those components again, so I'll post a link so you can jump to seeing how all of those different pieces worked in that list. What I want to cover today is the changes that are coming out of Into the Inklands for this list. I will go over the core component of that list in case you don't want to watch another video, but I'll also chop this up so if you want to jump straight to the changes, because maybe you've been playing this deck, I'll chop this video up so you can jump to the changes section. Alright, let's do a quick recap. The original Alice Cascading combo deck used interactions between 3 characters who all grant bonus lore when given enough strength. That's Pain Underworld Imp, Pete Bad Guy, and Alice Growing Girl. If you have all 3 of these in play and you meet their strength requirements in a single turn, they combine for a total of 12 lore, which can steal a lot of matches from the jaws of defeat. I'm talking about matches where your opponent is pretty sure they're gonna win. They don't really see a lot coming out of your deck. You're not even really questing with your characters or like, what the heck does this deck even do? And all of a sudden, you go from 8 to 20 lore in a single turn, and they have no idea what just happened. So the way this happens is due to the fact that Alice Growing Girl gives all of your characters support, which means if you're able to fill one of their strength clauses, it is highly likely that you're able to fulfill other ones, because once that strength buffed character quests, he gives all that bonus strength that he's accumulated to another character. So if you're able to get Pain, this 2-ink 1/4 who quests for 1, or if his strength is 5 or greater, he quests for 3. If you're able to give him 4 additional strength, he then quests for 3 and grants 5 strength to another character. We'll give that strength to Pete Bad Guy. This 3/4 who quests for 2 actually quests for 4 if he has 4 additional strength. He's getting 5 additional strength from Pain, making him an 8/4. So now he's able to quest for 4, and then he gives his 8 strength to Alice. Alice Growing Girl, when she has 10 or more strength, quests for 5. You've just given her 8 strength from Pete, so she's now a 9/4. If she can get 1 more strength from another source, whether that be another character questing, whether that be the improvised cantrip, if you can give her 1 more strength, she quests for 5, and that means you went from having a board that quests for a total of 4 to generating 12 lore. A 3 times multiplier over your original board state. And this allows this deck to win matches from seemingly nowhere. So that's the core component of the deck. Now let's talk about what about Into the Inklands has changed this deck. So I had some people ask, hey, what are you going to change about this list? And I went back to working on it again after doing some new fun lists, which I'll be releasing soon as well. So I went back to look at this one and I started testing it against a lot of the new Into the Inklands lists. Location control decks, Beast 1 turn win, Jafar Whole New World. I started testing this deck list out a lot and found that it was fairly susceptible to removal, too much so compared to these other lists. So I had to go to the drawing board and say, what about this list? How do we pump more resiliency into this list? Consistent draw engines. You're starting to see these pop up in lists. I'm talking about Sumerian Talisman, even some strange decks using Weight Set, in addition to the traditional Hiram Flavershams and Prince Johns, ways to draw tons of cards throughout the match and be very resilient to removal. And we need that in this list because this list is using these niche characters who are not on their own very strong but need to be combined together to make board winning quests. I looked at Sapphire. I said we can't run Hiram Flaversham. We just don't have enough items and we can't fit enough items in here. When I run Hiram, I like to have a critical mass of items. I'm talking 12 or more items, and we could not fit 12 or more items into this list. When I look at Emerald, I think of their consistent draw engine as being Prince John, who's discard centric. Similarly, we can't fit 12 cards that support discarding into this list in addition to Prince John. It just wasn't going to fit into the already tight list. So we had to go deeper into the tank and come up with a new way to draw some cards. And it wasn't only after I had played against a friend who built a multiplayer deck based around a new card from the set, which I was really impressed, that I decided we're going to try and lean in a new direction to be consistently drawing cards throughout the match to keep us in the match, just having characters removed fairly consistently. That new card is Airfoil. This 2-ink inkable item has an ability called I Got to Be Going. It says exert me, and if you play 2 or more actions this turn, you draw a card. So if we're able to play 2 actions a turn, we can exert this item to draw a card. So we already run a pretty decent density of cantrips. Those are actions that cost 1 ink and draw us a card, in addition to doing something else. But that something else is rarely as relevant as it's a 1 ink action that draws a card. These are very useful in triggering things like Pete Bad Guy, who grows in strength every time we play an action, as well as feeding into things like Airfoil, where if we're able to play 2 of those back to back, we really haven't used up a significant amount of our ink. We still have ability to play other characters, as well as we've made Airfoil active so that we can draw a card off of it. In addition to running the original Improvise and Develop Your Brains, we're also going to be running now Nothing to Hide. This is a 1 ink inkable action from set 2, Rise of the Floodborn, that says each opponent reveals their hand, period. Draw a card, period. So not a hugely useful effect. It's not going to impact the game in any significant way, but it will allow you to play around certain things. I'm talking about the Be Prepares in their hand, or very useful is seeing a whole new world in their hand. You know to play out your hand a little bit faster, start inking things more aggressively, because your opponent is probably going to want a whole new world pretty soon. So Nothing to Hide is a helpful addition from the old set, but there's going to be some newer songs that we're going to be playing in this one. But before I get to those, as means to help trigger Airfoil, I want to talk about the other second big addition from the new set, and that is the very expensive, probably most expensive card in the new set, Ursula, Deceiver of All. This 3 ink inkable 2/3 that quests for 1 has the ability that called What a Deal. Whenever this character sings a song, you may play that song again from your discard for free, then put it on the bottom of your deck. This card is insane, and it demands a very high price point, and this deck has been blown up by this card, and it's showing up in all kinds of lists, and it is absolutely just abusive of how strong this card is. This doubles any song that you sing, and she can sing quite a good number of songs. Now, this package is a little underpowered compared to most. You see Ursula singing things like Friends on the Other Side to draw 4 cards. You see Ursula singing things like Strength of the Raging Fire, which allows her to blow up 2 characters. Those are some really powerful plays, and we do have in the original list Mother Knows Best. So this is one of our stronger plays. That returns a character to its player's hand. Now with Ursula, we can bounce 2 characters. She can sing it so it didn't cost us any ink, and we can bounce 2 characters to their owner's hands. There's also some flexibility in this list, and I'm going to go over another old card that I'm running now, where we can bounce our own characters to our hand to replay them to get additional value out of them. But I just want to go over some of the other really powerful cards with Ursula, Deceiver of All before I get to that last tie-in. There is the new song called Strike a Good Match. This 2 ink inkable song says draw 2 cards and discard a card. I don't know why this isn't in this set, this Emerald card, but I'm really happy that it is. I think that they were pushing Ursula so hard that they wanted to guarantee that somebody had a absolutely playable song available for Ursula in the same ink color as her. Despite pairing her with another really strong color as songs, at the very least you get Strike a Good Match, which is an inkable draw card song that Ursula can sing to double. The ability to draw and discard a card, usually for very cheap ink, gives us the ability to play a few more uninkables than I'd be comfortable with. Because if you get stuck with multiple Gaston intellectual powerhouses in your hand and you're nowhere near 6 ink, you can rely on Strike a Good Match to effectively replace one of those uninkables in your hand. You can draw a card that you can play before 6 ink and then just discard your Gaston intellectual powerhouse. So I do like these as being able to smooth out high uninkable counts, so this card is fairly decent. The other new song that we're going to be running in conjunction with Ursula, Deceiver of All is the 2 ink inkable Has Set My Heart, which I do not know what movie this is from. In fact, I didn't see this card in the spoilers, so when I opened a pack, I sat there and I stared at it for a good 10 seconds going, what the heck is this? I love this card. I love the art. I have no idea what it's from. If you know what it is, just leave a link below. I'm sure the Disney adult's going to yell at me for not knowing. But this is a 2 ink inkable action song that can banish chosen item. And the reason I've been adding this is there's a sharp rise in those other item-based draw engines showing up in decks. I'm talking about Sumerian Talisman. I've seen weight set decks. Then you have the classics like being able to knock out Fishbone Quills and those kinds of things is very helpful. And being able to be doubled by Ursula as a means to trigger our Airfoil is absolutely very useful. And I need to mention again that when Ursula, Deceiver of All doubles any of these songs, that immediately meets Airfoil's requirement to play 2 actions in 1 turn to draw a card. Songs are actions, and when Ursula plays them, they get played twice, which means Airfoil sees 2 actions played and can now draw a card. So being able to double any song is really strong with Airfoil. I have some skepticisms as to whether or not Has Set My Heart can hit 2 targets if there's two items in play or not, but at the very least, it's very usable, and maybe in a couple of weeks or a month, when some of these decks start to die off and they go back to the core decks, we might be able to cut this for a different song or a different action. But right now, I think it's useful to help combat the crazy amount of strange and niche decks that are out there right now. Now, the last thing I want to cover is one of the cards that I had mentioned that I should have been playing this whole time. Once again, this came from my play group that I was really impressed with, and I said, why wasn't I running this? And this is a 3-ink uninkable Bippity Boppity Boo. This song says, return chosen character of yours to your hand to play another character with the same cost or less for free. Now, I want to clear up something really quick. I'll mention it really quick. The card uses the phrase another character, but that does not mean you cannot play the exact same character you bounce to your hand. And that's exactly how we're going to play it. We're going to bounce things like Panic Underworld Imp or Gaston Intellectual Powerhouse to our hand and then immediately replay them. And the reason we're doing that is because we get to re-trigger their when you play this character based ability a second time. With Panic, that means we're able to pump a character by 2 or a Pain by 4 strength again. And with Gaston, it allows us to look at the top 3 cards of our deck and pick one to put in our hand again. So we're able to use Bippity Boppity Boo as a means to replay these cards and re-trigger them additional times throughout the match. Let alone for the fact that this is a song that can be sung by Ursula, and it has a really powerful interaction with Panic Underworld Imp and Pain Underworld Imp. That's kind of the original handcuffed interaction in this deck. Well, if you play a Panic Underworld Imp, granting Pain 4 additional strength, making him a 5/4, then you Bippity Boppity Boo and bounce him to your hand and then replay him a second time, giving Pain +4 strength a second time, that now means Pain Underworld Imp is a 9/4. Why does that matter? Because Alice Growing Girl is a 1/4 who, if you can give her 9 more strength, quests for 5. And now we have a very clear and easy way to do that consistently. We have a Pain and Panic in play, we Bippity Boppity Boo the Panic and play a second Panic, any number of these options available to us, and we're able to pump Pain all the way up to 9/4, quest for that bonus lore, grant all of his strength to Alice through her support, giving and making her a 10/4 consistently. This is a very consistent line that we can do now, which has been very helpful. I've pulled it off an alarmingly number of times. That has made me realize that I should have been running Bippity Boppity Boo this whole time. But of course, the fact that Ursula, Deceiver of All, can double Bippity Boppity Boo makes it infinitely easier. You can have a Panic in play and just a Bippity Boppity Boo in your hand, and you can pull this off because you can bounce and replay that Panic repeatedly with the doubled Bippity Boppity Boos that had been sung from Ursula, Deceiver of All. And also, real quick aside, Panic Underworld Imp can also sing Bippity Boppity Boo, which is great. He has a way to basically flicker himself and trigger Pain a second time. So, a lot of flexibility here that came out of this card that probably should have been in the original list. This deck is running a lot smoother with these airfoil draw engines. Sometimes it's challenging to set up a little bit because it pulls away from the support line, but this deck is much more resilient from consistently getting bombarded with things like grab your swords, dragon fires, all these removals things. This deck can power through a lot more of them and still fight to get that 20th lore. So I'll post a new deck list below. And real quick aside, if Ursula, Deceiver of All is unstomachable, this deck list had gotten fairly cheap. Guessing by what it looks like right now, it was around the $50 range still, even with the $8 Alice Growing Girls. If the sudden influx of 3 Ursula, Deceiver of Alls in this list and the additional 120 plus price tag is too much for you to stomach, you can also probably run this list with just more cantrips. The biggest strength of Ursula, Deceiver of All is a way to consistently trigger your airfoils as draw engines. So replacing her with just cantrips like Distract, which draws you a card, is probably going to perform somewhere in the ballpark of how this pushed deck would perform. Try it out on Pixelborn, but if you don't want to fork over the cash for paper version of this list, you can try it out with additional cantrips instead. I'll post a new deck list below. Let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know what movie has set my heart comes from. And if you've been playing this deck list, let me know. I'm always really happy to know that some crazy ideas that I've come up with, some people have enjoyed those lists. And I'm going to continue to pump out some crazy, weird deck lists for you all. For more Lorcana content, like and follow Lorcana University.